I ran into a scandalous meme this week, and it's basically a big list of games, some of which I love, and they just slapped the big label UNC SLOP onto it. And so I thought about it for a second, and I was kind of like thinking, like, you know what? You kind of have a point here in the sense of like I'm 31 now. Retro gaming to me was like you're playing on like freaking like Atari from the 80s or like MS DOS, when like all the computer games were like still things that you would type out. And so I think rather than be very like Grandpa Simpson about it, where I'm like, I used to be in and now I'm not, and one day it'll happen to you. I thought it would be more fun instead to, I think, dig into my appreciation for the stuff that I grew up with and what I think it represents now, like my Unk Slop that I grew up with. And I think an appreciation for where games are now for like the youngest generation. And I don't know if they mean it in the sense of like, well, we think these games are bad, they're slop, and you should feel bad and you're old. Or if they just mean like, hey, boomer, like, this is the stuff that you grew up with and it's past its prime. It's totally you core, you unk. I have, for example, like between me and my youngest brother, my youngest sibling, there's about a 16-year-old gap. And so the stuff that I grew up playing, like I grew up on like the Super Nintendo and like the PlayStation, the original one. I've never seen him take like a real like dedicated like interest in that. Like he loves video games, I know that, but I think for him, video games like they offer like a different role in his life. So we do share some common interests. I've seen how many hours he's put into Stardew Valley, almost as much as me. But when it comes to retro games specifically, like, I saw him growing up and he would play things like Fortnite for a little bit, on like when he had a tablet, and things like Roblox. Obviously, Roblox was real huge. And so I thought about like, well, what did games do for me when I was around his age, And I think that it was just like a different like purpose to games in a sense, like you just experience them differently. I like to think of it as like kind of like when like you have music now and you stream everything, like you just pay like the one subscription and you have access to whatever you would like, or you go up on YouTube and you look it up. Before technology got to the point where it is now, required a bit more of like not only just dedication, like setup and stuff like that, but I think it required you to like be willing to sift through more things, like we didn't have the internet to let us know what the greatest hits were. Sometimes you had to game with what you had. And it comes to like retro gaming specifically, sometimes the things wouldn't work. Like I have very core memories of like trying to make sure we had correct adapters, that the Nintendo would even work on certain CRTs or not. And trying to figure out the whole thing, like, oh, like there's a new thing called HDMI, like that was something that didn't exist before. And so the effort of like trying to sit down and plug in even something more modern, like the original PlayStation, like to sit down, you have to scroll to the correct channel and everything on the local TV station and make sure that you've got your memory card set up. Like whatever you have is what you're going to play. So like you best believe like I had quite an obsessive amount of time with things that are like licensed games. So like, I'm thinking like SpongeBob, Super Sponge, I think it was called, and like Rugrats, The Search for Reptar. Like those are things that I even like learned basically inside out, as much as games that I still love to this day, like Tony Hawk series, I'll still go back to them with like the most hardcore, like it's muscle memory basically to play those games again. And so I think that's not something that exists for people now, like there's like niches, obviously like indie games and stuff like that, like actual stuff you would find on itch.io, like that's got its own dedicated fan base. But I think in general, like the fact that everything is so accessible, like really changes the dynamic and how you enjoy things. And even me for myself, like I've noticed too, that it tends to be more that I think about the retro games that I've played, and it's like I love the memories associated with them, So like my taste in gaming almost is very much based off of like who I shared those memories with and what I was doing at the time. And like a real quick example is like you take a game that someone my brother's age would love, something like a Fortnite or a Roblox, and how integrated it is with like the internet now, right? It's like you go on there because you want to like interact with other people or like play with your friends, and that ends up being the main draw of it. But that was seen more as like like a very niche thing back then, like multiplayer games, you would think of things like World of Warcraft or stuff where you had to set up like peer-to-peer freaking servers and stuff like that. And it was more intricate, like the whole, like you play these massively multiplayer games on like, you can join in on your iPad, on the computer, on your phone. Like it's almost like a requirement for certain like interests. Like if you want to have friends, you hop on the same game that your friends are playing. But I would prefer something that's more like co-op. And that's just simply because I did play some multiplayer games growing up, and like I had to figure out how to set up servers for things like Minecraft, but it was more complex and more involved. And at the end of the day, it was still more because like I wanted to play with my friends. And so I love co-op because also not only is like that conductive, obviously, like if you have your friends over and stuff like that, you just hook up all 4 controllers and there you go. But I even grew up like that in like my early childhood situation where like I was living with family, like a lot of cousins were always over, siblings obviously too as well. Like I've got 3 of them. So to us, when we would play video games together, like we would really appreciate things that like worked out to play them together. Like we loved Smash Brothers. We loved things like Mario Kart was real handy. And then even when it comes to handhelds, like it was always like, yeah, like there were some games that was like, okay, cool, fun, like single player, but most of it was like, what could we all play together? I find myself too that like when it comes to my experience with retro gaming, like I'll reach for like the stuff that I grew up playing. Like recently I've been replaying through, for example, the original Rayman, like the PlayStation 1 OG platformer. And it's been a lot of fun, but I find myself that like I'll play it in quick bursts, it's like maybe 15, 20 minutes tops at a time. It's awesome. It's great to revisit it because I have like all these great memories about it, like it's an infamously difficult game. So I remember all the like just like the blood, sweat, and tears to get used to the controls that I still have muscle memory for. It was one of the first, I think, platformers I played in Mexico. I've got family in Mexico. They had I used to think it was a Jaguar, but it might have been a Sega Saturn. And so we used to sit down and try to beat Rayman, and so I have that positive association with it. I think it was like the first game, like I remember one of the first games where I really appreciated both the art style, because it's a very 90s cartoon, and the soundtrack to it. And like it even got me thinking a little bit about game development as a young kid. And I think I really appreciate it for all those things. But when it actually comes to sit down and like play video games, I find myself only wanting to do it in short bursts. It's kind of like, okay, like it's not really what I would play regularly now, But when it comes to like retro gaming, like I was digging through the list and I saw stuff like Spyro the Dragon and heck, even Tony Hawk is on here. Sonic Adventure 2 is on here. These are all games that are super beloved to me, but I don't think I would find myself like being so invested that I would like play through them fully and like how I used to, if that makes sense. It always seems to be like these quick bursts. And so I think UNC SLOP, the stuff that's like from that generation that we all grew up playing, is already starting to go down the route of like a very niche territory, like I don't necessarily think that they're going to be forgotten, but I think between the fact that a lot of physical media is going to start being destroyed soon, because, discs, cartridges, they'll only last for so long, like unless you've got some kind of crazy way to store them, I guess. But they're also just, again, a product of their own time, like developers and stuff like that, and audiences knew back then, like that, we all had CRTs and had to deal with memory cards, and we wanted like, the most for our experiences, bang for our buck. Like we could tell that like certain trends were really big, like that was the start of 3D gaming. So it's kind of like that on its own was like a type of selling point. Was your game in 3D or not? Like, how we'll visit certain movies, like a lot of people consider something like, say, like Citizen Kane to be the best movie of all time. I wouldn't necessarily like say that I've heard people call it their favorite though. Like it's not something that I see almost anyone go back to regularly, like not even from my friends that are very into movies, but they do like still say like it's a great movie, and certainly like a really like admirable, like worthy of that title, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, this is impeccable. It's got great examples of X, Y, and Z, cinematography and all that. I think the games on this list are going to go down a similar route, where I think the people that are playing them, like you're going to have less and less people that grew up with these same core memories like how we did. And it's going to be more people that are looking for like I guess, the origins of certain things and like just specific niches, which is funny because I find myself doing the niche one right now, actually. Like the thing that really captures my attention on my little handheld retro device is like stuff that I've never played ever. Like I'm currently playing through a game called Azure Blue, I believe it's called. And it's really interesting so far. It's an RPG, but it's got this like real interesting, like, it's like almost kind of like Pokemon. Like you capture monster eggs and hatch them, and you can either sell the eggs off and like make some money, or you can choose to like hatch the egg and see what creature comes out. And it could be real handy for your abilities, like if it's a really good one. But it's a really like, I would have never come across it ever, growing up. So this is the kind of stuff that it captures my attention because it's like it's really great aesthetically. Like I love stuff that gives me like that like PlayStation, almost Mega Man Legends energy. And I've never heard of this concept ever. And it's got all sorts of neat things going for it, And yes, it's dated, especially in the presentation, but there's a certain charm to it because I understand like the context of which, like when it came out, like it doesn't have all these fancy cutscenes and other like things that you would find in modern gaming, but that's okay. And you can even like override some of those things, with things like save states and walkthroughs. The internet's available, So it's a different experience now, and that's the kind of stuff I find myself reaching for. And on the other hand, too, like I think reaching for games where it's like, yes, this is the best example of like, say you wanted to develop a 3D platformer, well, you might as well go play like the very original, like Super Mario 64, like the first example that people will normally think of from that generation when it comes to that. Can you imagine like a game, for example, like Fall Guys existing in the way that it does were it not for platformers like that game? Or even like, call me crazy, but more modern examples of 3D platformers, like say A Hat in Time, like the influences that like these games have across genres, across like different games, I feel like it gets very understated. But I think even for me, like if it's not one of those two purposes, like digging for niche things or just like let me play this thing from my childhood that I have great memories for, I don't really find myself interested in anything like past a certain point, I would say. And I think it's gonna again just become more and more true as time goes on. And I think that's okay. And I think the same way that I saw like MS-DOS games and Atari games and stuff like that when I was growing up, I think the same thing's going to start to happen to the stuff that I grew up with. Like maybe it's honestly even beginning now. Like the stuff from the 90s is like freaking almost 40 years old now. So it's like a very different experience to ask a kid, I think, from like the younger generation, like unless you get one of those kids like that was born in the wrong generation, and like just like the kids that really want to bring back 70s music and stuff like that. Like you have these kids that are like, no, like we'll still uphold like traditions and we'll want to make like 2D platformers and 3D platformers and beat 'em ups and stuff like that and Metroidvanias, which is cool. I'm sure that's still going to exist too, but I think it is going to be seen really differently. And the new retro, honestly, now is probably considered to be more even like, I'm thinking like Xbox 360 and like the PS3. But I think overall, it doesn't diminish like how much I love some of these games. Like I can't imagine myself the same without having played things like Majora's Mask, Spyro the Dragon, especially the Tony Hawk series, especially. And I understand that I do have like nostalgia for them that plays a big role. But I also think that there's something just inherently satisfying about like just playing games for that reason. Like not everything has to be like this amazing new like crazy unique experience or this amazing epic story that like it won game of the year. There leaves space for that kind of stuff too, but I think it's okay to go back to the stuff that like well, you would consider to be like a core part of the stuff that you're into. Stuff that the younger generation's not gonna overall, I think, love as much because just gaming's so different now and technology is so different now. And they're going to have different core associations, different memories with their favorite games. And that's why they'll be their favorites. And one day I'm sure too, like these games will be so forgotten that like they'll be in the same realm as those DOS games, as those Atari games. Certain key examples survive, like you take arcade games, like, I mean, the world remembers Pac-Man still, and I'm sure no one's going to forget Super Mario 64 for like the rest of the time. But I think overall for a lot of these, especially licensed stuff, especially very like small fan base stuff, like it's gonna start like becoming a certain like different thing, I think. And I think one thing I'm gonna really enjoy is aging gracefully, in the sense of like, yeah, like I love the memories that I have playing these growing up. Yes, I love UNC SLOP. It's okay. But I accept and I know that these games were important for their time and relevant to their time. And that's kind of where they should stay, in a sense. Like, I'll give you this last example. Like, I loved Croc, Legend of Gobos, growing up. And they brought it back recently in a remaster. Like, you can go play Croc with like widescreen and HD textures and stuff like that. And it's cool. Like, it's neat that it exists, but I don't find any drive to go out and like get it, if that makes sense. Like, I think that the closest that I got to that experience was the Spyro the Dragon trilogy remake. But honestly, that's because they really sat down and like it's not just a remaster, you know, like they really remade the entire game in like a brand new engine and really updated everything. And I think there's something to be said for that. When it comes to going back to the stuff that I grew up with, there's no real drive for it, because I know that that time has passed and those memories have passed and I'll always have them. That means I think that their relevance is going to go the same way as those old Atari games, in the same way that, like, you know, silent movies, for example, I'm sure have their like niche audience. Like, I mean, I saw Street Angel once and I loved it and it's a great movie, but it's not really something that like gets talked about or appreciated, or it's just seen differently today. But obviously, you know, if you were to rewind to the 40s, maybe even like the 60s or 70s, you know, there's a lot more lively appreciation and discussion about it. But I think UNC SLOP, you should not be like turned off about talking about it, because I think, you know, overall, it's just a good bit of internet fun. And I think it's going to age gracefully into its own thing. And it's okay to keep the memory alive and continue to love it and talk about it. But just know that I think it's also going to go down like this whole like niche slash like freaking, I'm trying to develop or learn about a certain mechanic or gameplay style, and that's why I'm here. And that's going to be cool and it's going to be awesome and a lot of fun. But yeah, overall, I think those are my thoughts. I just wanted to do like a quick video on a meme for some reason, and just like it's not the same. The world's not the same. We don't have CRTs and memory cards and freaking like whatever the heck else you would associate with these, you know, growing up in the 90s. But the trade-offs are awesome, you know, like you're older now, you're wiser, you've got more disposable income, you have save states for your retro games, you have really easy access to them because of the internet, you know, like no matter how niche or obscure your favorite retro game might be, there's almost assuredly at least one other person out there that's a huge fan, and you could find them and talk to them. Is it a stereotype to be into these games? Yeah, a little bit. And I would say I'm pretty wedged in there. I do like me a good Tony Hawk or Sonic Adventure session still. But they're just games, and you should just learn to enjoy your time and live in the now. And just get excited for wherever the heck else like gaming's gonna go to from here. Because if this is the new old school, the new like forgotten gems, like that no one else is gonna talk about past a certain age, it's pretty exciting to think about where games are gonna go next for the younger generation. And I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. That's it for this video. Let me know what your favorite UNC SLOP experience is. I bet you if especially you're similar to me in age or in taste, we definitely have similar core memories about one of these games. But what do you think? What do you think is going to happen to like games from the 80s and 90s and below? Maybe even the early 2000s, honestly. Like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 is on here, which I think is like 03. Thank you for watching up to this point if you have. This has been Backseat Gaming, just chilling back here. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.